Morning, brothers and sisters. I thought today I'd make a video about partiality and how the scriptures has a great deal to say about these men who set themselves up to be God's words and leaders, and how they really took advantage of that when the daughter of Zion broke her covenant with him, which you see in Zechariah 11. But first I want to show you a book I bought. New book. Writing book. I don't think it's real leather, it's fake leather. But I thought I'd show it to my brothers and sisters who really likes books and to write in them. You see, has a place for the date and everything. I like these books. Just thought I'd share that with you. I write my poems in this one. I'm all about truth. Pretty fun stuff to do. And just normal pens. So anyway, we're going to talk about partiality. I know I'm a bit of a child when it comes to books. I actually would like more brothers and sisters to show me what they're writing in. I like looking at their books and at their paper. I'm a paper freak. I said this on one of my prior videos. Sorry. Okay. Because this shouldn't be too long of a video. We're actually going to look at a passage that we find in Micah 3:11. We're also going to look at that term, Lord of Lords. And for those who didn't watch my video, which was just a short video, I think it was 2 minutes and 28 seconds long, something like that, or 2 minutes and 27 seconds long. And it was about a little poem that I felt led to write for my Lord of Lords. And I'm going to show you... actually, I said Amir of Amirs, because in Arabic language, and you'll find that passage, it means Lord of Lords, okay? And Amir means topmost branch in Hebrew, okay? So you're looking at daughter Zion as your topmost branch, is what I believe. That's my personal assessment from the scriptures. But first of all, we're going to look at partiality and how these men who put themselves in positions of power because they made a covenant with the Holy Spirit to do so, really took advantage of that. So we're going to read a series of passages that actually are cross-references from a verse that we find in Micah 3:11. So let's look at Micah 3:11. And I actually wrote it down, so I don't really have to go there because I have another passage up here that I want to look at. But Micah 3:11 says this. It says, her leaders. Now the her here is Israel, the nation of Israel. And she's referred to as a she because she was the only seed of Eve's. Now if you recall in the very beginning, after Adam pointed at her, he rejected her more or less, is what this whole image is showing you. He sets Eve out, showing that he does not want a covenant with her. He chooses a covenant with that horse spirit that snuck into the garden called Lucifer. And these two spirits are representative of the two spirits that you find in Galatians 4 as two covenants. And one, it puts you under bondage, and one frees you, which is your mother from above. It says Jerusalem from above. Sarah represents that. Hagar represents the ones that put you in bondage, okay? So her here in Micah 3:11 is referring to Eve's seed. And one nation came from Eve that was set apart, like she was set apart. It was the glory set apart from Adam. He did not want a covenant with the righteous spirit. And the nation of Israel symbolized that. So when we're looking at the her here, we're looking at Eve's seed. The surrounding nations that surrounded Israel were all known as Adam's seed and the Holy Spirit's seed, okay? The Gentile nations. There's also, no, I won't go into the land not inhabited, because that's a little bit different yet again. But in Micah 3:11 it says this, her leaders judge for a bribe, her priests teach for a price, and her prophets tell fortunes for money, yet they look for the Lord's support and say, is not the Lord among us? All right. Now this is what the men did after they cast off the covenant with the daughter of Zion. And we see her breaking her staff with her name on it. It's not no male name. It's a female name, because the spirit we have proven is female over and over again. It's not male. I don't care how many times they write male. The spirit is not male. It is female. And she breaks her staff, her covenant with the men of Israel, is what she's shown doing in Zechariah 11. And she also breaks her covenant with her inheritance, which I've come to realize is known as bands, which is another name, I believe, for a wedding gift, a band. The power was hers. Anyway, we won't get into that. But these men cast off a covenant with her. And Mother says that, warns that after they brought the image of Baal in, which is your husband's as your Lord and your master, he's God now. All right? When they brought that image in, we're told, and we will go there, in Psalms 106, let me see if I can find it, that after they allowed Balaam in, Balaam says to Balak, he says, go get your women. Actually, he was meaning, go get your whores. And send them into the men of Israel and seduce the men of Israel. And we'll take the daughter Zion out that way. That's really what was at the heart, at the core of what was going on with Balaam and Balak. All right? Because Israel representing the woman seed who was ruled by these daughters of Zion was flourishing above any other nation around her. And they bowed down to Mother Yahweh. And these Gentile nations, these male nations who were governed by kings, paled in comparison to what the nation of Israel was doing. And so Balak couldn't have this. So he hires Balaam to curse them. He wants him to curse them. So when Balaam can't do that, I'll get it straight. Balaam says, go get your whores and send them in and seduce the men that way, and we'll take the daughter Zion out that way. Because you see in the very beginning, what does it say? It says, I'll place enmity between the woman seed and the whore spirit seed. It's two women, female seeds, one against the other. All right? That's what you've got. Just like you have fallen Adam and you have Christ representing risen Adam. Renewed, reborn. That doesn't mean all men are good Adams. They're not. Most of them are still following Baal worship. They believe a woman should be in subjection to them. That's Baal worship. That's what that is. My Christ never taught Baal worship. Never did. Now, in Psalm 106, what does it say? If I can find it. She says to the men after they come against her glory. All right? And they come against Moses, who supported the daughter Zion. And so when they do that, she says, fine to the men. She says, therefore, she lifted up her hand against them to overthrow them in the wilderness. 27. To overthrow their seed also among the nations and to scatter them in the lands. Now, the ones that she actually scattered here was the daughters of Zion. This is called the remnant of Israel, that the men of Israel rejected a covenant with. They didn't want nothing to do with her. And we've established the fact that because Eve's seed was blessed and it was represented by the nation of Israel, separated from the rest of the nations, which is what Eve represented. She was separated from Adam and all that would be called his. She was separated, and so she represented the glory. And so that meant that they were ruled by these daughters of Zion who had never broken their covenant with mother's commandments. And so it says to overthrow their seed also among the nations and to scatter them into the lands. They joined themselves. This is the men who did this. They joined themselves also unto Baal Peor and ate the sacrifices of the dead. Thus they provoked her to anger with their inventions and the plague breaking upon them. Now we discussed that in another video called the yoke. I know the term the yoke is in that video. I just can't remember the full title of it. The yoke of daughter Zion or something like that. And in all that we discussed what actually went down in the desert and how they became contaminated by the whore spirit seed. Because those women were sent in to contaminate the daughter Zion seed. And Mother says, fine, to the men. You don't want a covenant with my righteous daughters. You won't have a covenant with them. I'll cast them out into the fields of the Gentiles. Right? I'll cast them out into a land not inhabited. Because you see, the body of the Gentiles, actually, I tend to think now, the more I've studied it, it's actually referring to lands not inhabited. And so I'm not going to go into more detail than that on it. But it's also a term for the Gentile nations that were not inhabited, okay, by the righteous spirit. But here, Mother says, fine, you don't want my daughter Zion, you don't want to be in covenant with her, I'll cast her out. So here in Micah 3:11 we have, her leaders judge for a bribe, her priests teach for a price, and her prophets tell fortunes for money. Yet they look for the Lord's support and say, is not the Lord among us? So they begin to deal very treacherously, especially with their sisters. And so we're going to read all of our cross-reference verses here that we find when we pull up 3:11. It's going to pull up a whole bunch of other verses. But let's start with 10 in Micah 3. We'll start in 10, although I've already read verse 11. Who builds Zion with bloodshed and Jerusalem with iniquity? These are her priests, her high priests, her rulers, her leaders. Her leaders judge for a bribe, her priests teach for a price, and her prophets practice divination for money. Yet they lean upon the Lord, saying, is not the Lord among us? No disaster can come upon us. Verse 12, therefore, because of you, Zion will be plowed like a field, and Jerusalem will become a heap of rubble, and the Temple Mount a wooded ridge. Now, that's exactly what happened when they determined that they did not want a covenant with these daughters of Zion. And you see her breaking her covenant in Zechariah 11. But what does it say? Proverbs 17:23. All of these verses feeds in and tells you what the men did. These supposed priests, and we're going to look at them a little bit more sharply in Micah 2. So Isaiah 1:23, your rulers are rebels, friends of thieves. They all love bribes and chasing after rewards. They do not defend the fatherless, and the plea of the widow never comes before them. They don't care about truth. Isaiah 5:23, who acquit the guilty for a bribe and deprive the innocent of justice. There we're actually looking at the law of bitter waters. The men, all they had to do was have a wicked thought against their wife. They brought her before the priest. They handed him a little bit of dough, and he would see that she got poisoned. That's basically what you were looking at. And you want to look at the law of bitter waters, you go to Numbers 5, and it starts at verse 11. Because men couldn't be guilty of ever doing this, though polygamy ran rampant. They were okay with polygamy and men having all the women they wanted, all the wives they wanted, all the concubines. That wasn't wrong in God's eyes. But the minute he had a wicked thought against his wife, he brought her up to the high priest, handed him a little dough and said, poison her. Basically, that's what you have at the heart of it when you begin to understand how wicked these men were. Isaiah 48 verse 2. Who indeed call yourselves after the holy city and lean on the God of Israel, the Lord of hosts is her name. I don't know what that one's in there for. Isaiah 56:11. Like ravenous dogs, they are never satisfied. They are shepherds with no discernment. They all turn to their own way, each one seeking his own gain. That's your Baal image, your husband as Lord and Master. What they're seeking is their own gain. And that's what man-made laws came to do, was to exalt men under those laws. And anytime a woman fought for herself, she's called a feminist. Yeah! So they said that's okay. Eventually over time, and we're talking recent times here, when women began to fight for themselves, men said, fine, we can twist this around. We'll give them rights. We'll let them think that they're the rights that they want, but they're really the rights we want them to have, such as going naked. Yeah, we'll make them think that that's what they want, because we'll hire a bunch of whores again to come in and say that they want that, and they'll speak for all women. No, they won't. No, they won't. They'll speak for him and that harlot spirit that he's in covenant with. That's how these laws got made. All right? From unjust men who dealt treacherously with their righteous sisters. Jeremiah 6:13, for from the least of them to the greatest, all are greedy for gain. From prophet to priest, all practice deceit. Baby, they can't stand to have their sister stand next to them as an equal. They couldn't stand that. They had to take red play, and the Holy Spirit allowed him to do that. Jeremiah 7:4, do not trust in deceptive words, chanting, this is the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. No, that's the Baal image, that's fallen Adam. That is not the temple of the Lord. Christ is the tabernacle of where the true living God dwells, and that's the righteous spirit called daughter Zion. These men who wants to exalt the image of Baal, a man, as your Lord and Master, is governed by the harlot spirit, which basically comes down to himself governing himself. He says, we don't need them to govern us. We'll govern ourselves. And you see, that's why they can't deliver the burden. Because only the righteous spirit can deliver the burden, the children. No man can do this. You see, and we talked about that in our last video. All right. Jeremiah 23:17. They keep saying to those who despise me, the Lord says that you will have peace, and to everyone who walks in the stubbornness in his own heart, no harm will come to me. They think by teaching falsehood and by exalting the image of Baal and saying that the Lord God, which is daughter Zion, can't deliver the burden, oh, it's too much for her, that they think that they're going to do it. They think that no harm's going to come to them, that there's no payout on this at the end to the daughter Zion. Oh, but there is. And I believe Jeremiah 23 says in that very chapter that the fathers have taught their sons to worship Baal. They've taught themselves to worship themselves as the image of God. They've taught that to themselves. And they cut out the feminine, the righteous feminine. Oh, they love bringing in the harlot. That way they get to point and say, her fault, her fault, her fault. But the righteous spirit, they never bring her in. Christ did. Christ did. Christ exalted his sister as his spirit. Jeremiah 26:7. The priests, the prophets, and all the people heard Jeremiah speaking these words in the house of the Lord. So that's all it says there. Ezekiel 34:2. Son of man, prophesy against the shepherds of Israel. Prophesy and tell them that this is what the Lord God says. Woe to the shepherds of Israel who only feed themselves. Should not the shepherds feed their flock? But they didn't. God says, I'm not a God of inequality. I'm not a God of various weights, and yet your priests teach it. You made laws against my righteous daughters that actually targeted them. You made laws against that, and we're going to prove that by studying Micah 2 in a minute. Hosea 4:8. They feed on the sins of my people and set their hearts on iniquity. Hosea 4:18. When their liquor is gone, they turn to prostitution. Their rulers dearly love disgrace. They love debasement. They live for it because it empowers them. That's what they think. Amos 5:14. Seek good, not evil, so that you may live. And the Lord, the God of hosts, will be with you as you have claimed. Micah 7:3. Both hands are skilled at evil. The prince and the judge demands abroad. When the powerful utters his evil desire, they all conspire together, and they do. And they conspire against the righteous daughters to get them out of the land, to suppress them. They used violence. They used whatever means was necessary to get rid of the righteous daughter, the righteous spirit, who they were to be in covenant with, and they rejected a covenant with her. Malachi 2:9. So I, in turn, have made you despised and humiliated before all the people because you have not kept my ways, but have shown partiality in matters of the law. That's in Malachi 2:9. So let's look at Malachi and see what Malachi actually is addressing here. Malachi 2 says this. What does it say? Okay, because they tend to take the female right out of it. But you see, if you read this whole right down from verse 1 to verse 16, it clearly tells you who they were partial against. It was against righteous daughters that they were partial against. But nobody ever bothers to read right to the end of 16 where it tells you what they were partial against, which were the righteous daughters. They wanted a covenant with the Holy Spirit. And so that allowed them to make their own laws They didn't want to be governed by God. Verse 1, and now, O ye priests, this commandment is for you. If ye will not hear, and if ye will not lay it to heart to give glory unto my name, saith the Lord of hosts, I will even send a curse upon you. So, actually the curse I think God's talking about is the law of bitter waters. Because that's what it talks about. It talks about a curse on these women who dared go against her husband, and which was just a load of crap, because it was these men who were going against their righteous wives. They wanted to be empowered. And I will curse your blessings. Yea, I have cursed them already, because ye do not lay it to your heart. Verse 3, behold, I will corrupt your seed. I'm going to corrupt your seed. And spread dung upon your faces, even the dung of your solemn feasts, and one shall take you away with it. Verse 4, and ye shall know that I have sent this commandment unto you, that my covenant might be with Levi. Alright? So what it looks like is the Levites were not part of this. They actually stuck to the truth. What it looked like was other men from other tribes were coming in and claiming that they were of the priesthood. And they were not God's chosen priests. Covenant might be with Levi, saith the Lord of hosts. But then there's also another passage here that alludes to something a little differently. We'll get to that in a minute. My covenant was with him of life and peace, and I gave them to him for the fear wherewith he feared me and was afraid before my name. The law of truth was in his mouth, and iniquity was not found in his lips. And he walked with me in peace and equity. Who did he walk with? He walked with daughter Zion, who's called God in the scriptures. And did turn many away from iniquity. For the priest's lip should keep knowledge, and they should seek the law at his mouth, from her, from the Spirit that he's in covenant with, the righteous daughter Zion. For he is the messenger of the Lord of hosts. But ye are departed out of the way, ye have caused many to stumble at the law, ye have corrupted the covenant of Levi, saith the Lord of hosts. Therefore have I also made you contemptible and base before all the people, according as ye have not kept my way, but have been partial in the law. They were, because you see, they began to depart from a covenant with the righteous spirit daughter Zion, who was God, and chose a covenant with these horror spirits. That they decided that they wanted to be in covenant with, and we've discussed all this before. Have we not all one mother, not father? Had not one God birthed you, created you? Why do you deal unfaithfully against, it says man, treacherously, every man against, it says his brother, not against his sister. This clearly tells you it was his sister he was dealing treacherously against. It wasn't his brother. They completely lie here. And you can see it with your own eyes. Just read Malachi 2, 1-16. You can see it with your own eyes that they lied against his sister by profaning the covenant of our mother and our father. 11. Judah had dealt untreacherously, and abomination is committed in Israel and in Jerusalem, for Judah had profaned the holiness of the Lord, which she loved, and had married the daughter of a strange god. What are we talking about? We're not talking about dealing against your brothers. We're talking about dealing against your sisters. Verse 12. The Lord will cut off that man that doeth this, the master and the scholar of the tabernacle of Jacob, and him that offered an offering unto the Lord of hosts. And this have ye done again, covering the altar of the Lord with tears and with weeping, and with crying out, insomuch that she regardeth not the offering any more, or receiveth it with goodwill at your hand. They were such a bunch of fakers. It wasn't even funny. Verse 14, yet ye say, wherefore? Why won't you hear us? Because the Lord hath been witness between thee and the wife of thy youth, the righteous spirit that you were to be in covenant with, against whom you have dealt treacherously, yet is she thy companion, and the wife of thy covenant. Verse 15, and did not she make one? So we're going back to the garden, we're going back to Adam and the woman, body and spirit, male and female, who he dealt treacherously with. He dealt treacherously against. He didn't want a covenant with the righteous spirit. He wanted the horror spirit's rulership, because that meant he put himself in charge, and Baal worship came into existence, which means your husband as your Lord and Master. What does Hosea 2? Lord, mother there, it's not father, because it's a mother that crowns the son We're told that in Solomon, Song of Songs, not Song of Solomon, Song of Songs, that it is the mother that crowns the son with the crown, which is your daughter, which is the Spirit. And she says, did I not make one? But it says in Hosea 2, I will remove the name of Baal out of your mouth, because your husband isn't your Lord and Master. He never was. He's your husband, and that's all he was ever intended to be. And did not she make one? Yet hath he the residue of the Spirit, and wherefore one? She says, why did I make one? One body, one spirit, one male, one righteous female of the Spirit. And wherefore one? That I might seek a godly seed. Therefore take heed to your spirit, to your wife, and let none deal treacherously against the wife of his youth. So who were they creating laws against? Who were they being partial in the laws against? It wasn't against their brothers. It was against the righteous daughters. Verse 6, for the Lord the God of Israel saith that she hateth putting away, for one covereth violence. They were creating laws that permitted violence against righteous daughters, and they thought they were smart getting away with it. With his garment, saith the Lord of hosts, therefore take heed to your spirit, to your wife, to your righteous spirit, that you do not deal treacherously. There it is. But they'll put, oh, that they were dealing treacherously against their brothers. They were not. They were in treachery against their sisters, just like many of the sons who claim they're of Christ are in treachery against the righteous daughters or sisters. They want to keep you subjugated under them because they want to believe that they're God. Well, that's Baal. You see, they've been taught the image of Baal by their fathers, who were taught it by their fathers, who were taught it by their fathers, by the forefathers who created these laws that subjugated righteous daughters under the laws of violence that they created and perpetuated against them to get them out of the land. And they thought, well, we'll get far enough in, there'll be none that will remember it ever, except, you forgot Mother says, my spirit will always remember the truth. And she says, when I deem it's time, they're going to pick their heads up and they're going to realize the truth. And you know how they're going to do it? With your own lies in here. They're going to catch you in your own lies. That's what she says. So, you want to go look at that? You go look at that. I don't care what anybody says. My Christ did not come to subjugate me. That's man's teachings. Woman must remain silent. Submit to your husband. Bull crap. That's saying Baal is your Lord and your Master. That's what that's saying. And we've already referenced a whole bunch of verses that shows you your men as your Baal, your husband as your Lord and your Master. It is the image Baal. We're to submit out of one another, out of love. Now, yeah, I'm intense. Sorry about that. No, I'm not. Somebody has to tell the truth. And nobody's looking for it. It's not important enough that truth matters and that we put the righteous feminine back where she belongs. They've got it that, oh, it's the righteous sons against those wicked women. Well, where does the righteous women factor into it? Hello? They teach that it's all righteous men against those wicked women. Bullcrap. Not according to this. It was wicked sons making laws that perpetuated violence against these righteous daughters under the law, and you thought you'd get away with it. Ha! Guess what? Mother says, well, you ain't no gods. You ain't going to deliver no burden. That's what it says, I believe, in Isaiah 46. Let's look it up, if my computer will work. Okay, Isaiah 46. I think it's in. Let's read the first few verses of 46. It's very slow, my computer. It's old. It probably should be cleaned. I've got too much information on it. Okay. It's really slow, folks. Sorry about that. Okay. So we'll parallel it. The chapters. We'll hit parallel. Well, the top parallel on Bible Hub will just bring up usually one verse. But the bottom par will bring up the whole chapter. And then we'll go to the top here and we'll hit on chapter 46. Okay. And I believe it's 46. I'm not 100. Yeah, it is. I did a video on this. Okay. I think it's called Woman's Mantle, the Great Shaking. And Daughter Zion. Something about Daughter Zion coming back into existence. That's the name of the video that I did this study on. What does it say in verse 1? It says, Baal boweth down. Baal there is Baal, B-A-A-L. Now the origins of Baal simply meant Lord. And it came from, it's 1167, it says, Lord, husband, master. And then eventually that word turned into a god. Your husband became your god. Baal, B-A-A-L, 1168. And we discussed how that was so because he began to fire words at her. He took her down under the law. He made her subjugated under him, under his image as the God image and the God image alone, because he was in covenant with the Holy Spirit to do so. Okay. Baal boweth down, Nebu stoopeth, their idols were upon the beasts and upon the cattle, carriages were heavy laden, they are a burden to the weary beasts. Where your fake images, your false images that you made, that I told you, you are to make no image, neither male nor female, and all of a sudden we got a he, God. Yes, there you go. That's your Baal image coming into existence. But it says these idols are a burden to your beasts. But then verse 2 it says, they stooped, they bowed down together, they could not deliver the burden, but themselves are gone into captivity. So these false images, these images of Baal, of Nebu, these false images are unable to deliver the children. You know why? Because only the spirit, which is represented by the female, the feminine, who delivers children, can deliver the burden. That's the children. And she does that through truth. What does James 1 verse 6 or 9 says? I will deliver you through the words of truth. I will birth you. Well, it's no man that births. It's the Spirit that does that. That's Christ's Spirit manifested in this earth. Verse 3, hearken unto me, O house of Israel, and all the remnant of the house of Israel, which are born, carried by me from the belly, which are carried from the womb. We're not looking at no male God that's going to deliver the burden. We're looking at she, the Spirit that does this. Verse 4, and even to your old age I am she, and even to your hoar hairs, your gray hair, will I carry you. I have made and I will bear, even I will carry and I will deliver you. So, guess who's going to deliver you? That's why you see in Jeremiah 30, verse 6, why do I see every man standing around with his hands on his hips, as a woman in travail? They're trying to deliver the burden. Men aren't appointed to deliver the burden. They can't birth the burden, which we come to understand as children. It's not appointed on them to do this. It's appointed on the daughter Zion to do this, to birth truth in the earth. And by birthing truth, she births the children. Verse 5, to whom will ye liken me and make me equal and compare me, that we may be alike? Let me go down here and see what else is in this verse. My counsel shall stand. I will bring near my righteousness, it shall not be far off, and my salvation shall not tarry, and I will place salvation in Zion for Israel, my glory. She tells you over and over again, her glory she's not going to give to another. It's going to be to the daughter Zion that she gives her glory to. Okay, so we wanted to look at how they're not going to deliver no burden. Men do not deliver children. This very creation, God's creation, testifies to that as a truth. And then you also have to understand we're under law, we're under sin. So this creation shows you a bunch of lies too. And that's due to man-made law, man-made theology, teaching what tickles his little ears. Mother says, I'm going to force him to spew it out of his stomach. It says it tastes like honey on his tongue, but it's cobra's venom in his stomach. But she says, I'm going to force it out of his stomach. I'm going to force him to puke it up. So now let's look at Lord of Lords, okay? Now I said in one of my videos that the Lord of Lords is daughter Zion. She's the Queen of Kings. That's what she is. But you'll also find passages that'll have that Lord of Lords, and I don't know how many, I didn't really look at it, but I know in Psalm 136 verse 3, it's 113 over 113. Well, that's telling you Christ is over every man. Christ is Lord of Lords. We're talking men here, we're not talking women. He is the King of all men. Really. That's what Psalm 136:3 says, because the words are 113, 113, Lord of Lords. But if you go to Deuteronomy 10:17, it's going to put that Lord different. It's going to say Lord of Lords is 136 over 113. It's totally different, because it's the Queen of Kings here. It's the Queen of Lords. She is the Master. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, the great God, mighty and awesome, who shows no partiality and accepts no brides. That's your daughter Zion. She never accepted partiality. She never accepted brides. She stuck to her covenant with Mother Yahweh, who she was in covenant with. She's part of that congregation that belonged to Mother. These daughters of Zion are called the congregation that belong to the Mother Spirit. So here you have that passage, Lord of Lords. Now there is a slightly different rendering, and I find it absolutely fascinating, because it actually links you back to Naomi in the book of Ruth. Okay? Now I didn't pull the passage up, but you find it in, if you want to pull up the passage in, I believe it was Daniel 2:47. So let's go to the book of Daniel 2, and it was 47 was the verse. The king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, seeing thou couldest reveal the secret. Well, the only one that can reveal secrets is the Spirit. The Spirit alone does that. And the Lord here is an interesting word. It's actually 4756. All right? And it's Mare is what it is. Let me see if I can pull it up. If my computer will allow me to do that. Sorry about the racket I make too with this typing in. What was it? 4756. Okay. Okay, and it's Mare, Lord. All right. So we're looking at, the king answered unto Daniel and said, of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods and a Lord of kings. Lord here is 4756, Mare, or Mare, M-A-R-E. All right. Now, of course, they have a masculine. They have everything masculine. There's no such thing as a female Lord. And it says it's from a root corresponding to Mara, in the sense of domineering, a master, a lord, a lord. Now, I find it interesting that it's actually going to take us back to Naomi, right? Mara. Actually, it doesn't. It says perhaps to flap the wings. But Mara, and I think they lied on this, because when you get studying the translations, you come to realize they told a lot of lies on their translations. But if you go to Mara, let's leave that one up. We'll pull up a new tab here, and we'll go to verse. Okay, let's see if that'll do it. Okay, so it's Ruth 1:20. What does she say? What does Naomi say here? She says, don't call me Naomi, she told me. Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. Well, now, you see, in the East, bitter don't mean the same thing that it means here. Bitter over there, what she was saying is, call me strong. The Lord has caused me to come through many trials, but I have come through it stronger because of what the Lord has put me through. And that means the Lord's going to deal with each one of us and take us through paths that we need to come through, that's going to strengthen us to be the people that the Lord needs us to be. So she says, call me not Naomi, call me Mara. All right? And I find it's interesting because they'll say that that word Mare derives, or Mare, derives from Mara, but they got a different Mara there. This one's 4755 in Ruth 120. Bitter. It's a symbolic name for Naomi. Bitter. This is all they'll do, right? They play around with words, and who do you think was playing around with words if it wasn't men who were in power to rewrite a lot of things? Who do you think that our words come from? It comes from the Jews. It comes from Hebraic texts. That we take their words that, well, this is the truth of God, end of story. Is that right? Christ warned you not to get caught up in the vain traditions of men, which is to worship the image of Baal themselves. Especially women. Righteous daughters are to be under men. I don't think so. To be bitter, troubled, embittered, enraged. That's not the Eastern understanding of it. It means to strengthen you. That's what it means. And I find it interesting that that Lord here, when you go in, it derives Mara, but it's not this one. Oh no. I think it is this one. They work to remove the feminine out of every part. It's talking about a queen and a god of and a queen of kings and a revealer of secrets. It's the spirit that reveals the secrets. A drop, Mare. Nations are like a drop hanging from a bucket, from Mara, in its original sense of distillation, a drop. So we can keep running around in circles on that. And you can go look up your Lord of Lords, your Amir of Amirs, which I mentioned in my poem. And you can see how it is daughter Zion. She is the Lord of Lords. She's the one that sits to Christ's right hand in Psalms 110. We've discussed this. I'm going to continue to discuss it. You know, I talk about my hits. I had one video, went up to 310. It was, I think it was climbing. And they dropped it down to 47 counts. They got it down to 47 counts. And I know they've done this with all my videos. When my overall count goes up, it'll climb up about 200 counts, and then my overall count will drop. I don't know how many times I've climbed to like 5,800, just about 5,800, and they'll drop me right back down to 55, 5,600. I don't know how your overall count can do that for over a year after you're posting video after video after video. I really don't know how they can keep doing it. And yet they do. Because they're trying to dishearten me. They don't want me speaking the truth, especially men. Men hate what I've got to say. They don't want to hear what I have to say because it's hurting them. It hurts their little ears. And anytime you stand up for a woman, you're feminist. But they can stand up for men, no harm done. They're not a bunch of masculinists who's looking out for themselves, who's trying to keep the law where it is to keep them rich and rulers. You know, a man loves to say, oh, she's a gold digger. Well, try making the law equal. You won't have to worry about a gold digger, but you don't want to do that because you want to be able to point at her and say, oh, she's a gold digger. Women do 2/3 of the world's work and gets paid 1/3. Well, you tell me that ain't a man-made law? But I'm a feminist. Yeah, I'm a feminist for standing up for women. Righteous daughters. And that's what the sons is supposed to be doing. If you're a righteous son, then you're supposed to be doing that. Christ did it. Christ stood for the daughter Zion, whether you know it or not. That's the spirit that he stood for and put back in her rightful place. And she's what governs the body, and she's what gives it life. And she's what's going to birth it. No man can birth the body. It's appointed unto the daughter of Zion to do that. And this carries over from the last video that I did. So, there you have it. You know, I've challenged them many times. Why don't you just leave my videos at 0? Why don't you just 0 them all out? I've challenged them in my comments, you know. But, you know, they're cowardly. They'll go to 310 and drop it to 47, and but they don't dare take it to 0. Because, you know what? They're a bunch of lying cowards. That's what they are. And they do not want the truth out there. They do not want the head picking her head up. That's why they have the cross inverted. You know, as above, so below, the occult world says, no, it ain't. You see, men believe that. Well, if men's in charge below, they must be in charge above. That's a lie. Because below, they invert the head, which is the daughter of Zion. They've inverted the head. They've shoved it into the ground. And that's why it speaks of the behemoth picking her head back up. That behemoth represents Israel. A powerful moving entity once she opens her eyes to the deeper truths and the lies of fallen Adam. And that whore spirit, that harlot spirit, they're one. No, you're not. You're one. He's a harlot who wants to exalt himself as God. That's what the Antichrist is going to do. He's going to step in the temple and exalt himself as God. And he's going to do it under these laws. Old Testament law. Old covenant. Actually, the original covenant was the 10 covenants, the 10 commandments that Christ come and tells you about. That was the original covenant. You see, and then they determined they were going to make their own laws and govern themselves through the Holy Spirit. And that's what he did. He wrote a whole bunch of laws, subjugating and creating violence against women under the law. But you know what? You women needs to suffer that. Yeah, let him beat you around. Be his doormat. That makes you a righteous woman. Don't think so. Christ said, where's my sister to stand for my truths? You protect what I died for. I didn't die and suffer so you could continue having a yoke on your neck by your brother who really hates you. I came to stand beside you as an equal because we are equal under this covenant. No man is over you. I'm going to remove the word of Baal out of your mouth. He is not your Lord and Master, and he never was. So pick your head up. Okay, there's my video for today. And I've yammered much longer than I intended to. Thanks for anybody who watches my video, pays attention, goes in, tries to study these things for yourself. I appreciate you taking the time to watch it, to talk about it to others, whatever you might do. I appreciate it. And I hope you have a warm day, cozy day. It's not that cold here today, but it's still winter, you know. And I hope the Lord blesses you and all of your endeavors as long as they're of the Lord. So have a nice day.